3, 2, 1.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Eat, Sleep, Cry, and Repeat. My name is Ami Moded from Little One That Care, and together with me, the lovely Dr. Dana. I have no idea how to say her last name. Marchese?
Marchese.
Marchese. So sorry. I was trying to say it so many times, and I don't know why I don't do it properly. I'm so sorry. These differences, I need to work on that. So, Dr. Dana, can you introduce yourself, who you are, where you're from, what are you doing for living?
Sure. Good morning. I'm Dana Marchese. I'm here from my office in Towson, Maryland. I am a child psychologist. I'm a licensed psychologist in the state of Maryland. I'm trained as a school psychologist. I worked for Johns Hopkins University and colleagues for about 16 years. There I worked for a place called the Center for Prevention and Early Intervention. And we were looking at the best practices for children and adolescents around anxiety and depression, attention problems, bullying. And so my specialty, I guess I specialize in children and families, emotional behavioral problems. I also did a lot of work with teachers, coaching teachers. My dissertation work is around classroom and behavior management in the classroom, supporting students in the classroom. We also wrote 2 books along the way, one around running groups in schools and one around coaching teachers. And I also did a lot of parent training work as well. I went to the University of Missouri for my PhD. And then I came back to Maryland here and worked at the University of Maryland Center for School Mental Health, Department of Psychiatry for my pre-doc. And then I have 2 children myself. I'm a mom. It's actually my daughter's birthday today. My daughter is 4 today. And I also have an 8-year-old little boy who's so sweet. So I'm a mom myself. And then more recently, I went into private practice. So I have a private practice where I work with children and families in Towson. There's literally a playground right out back. It's like the dream place location. You can see one of our rooms behind me. And I specialize in children, adolescents, anxiety, depression, behavior problems, social skills. A lot of the work that we did at Hopkins, I'm bringing to the practice. So I've been here for 2 years, and I have a solo practice, and I've been in private practice for 5.
I see. So let's jump in to the conversation. Let me ask you a few questions, and let's try to get some insights today. I would like to share with you a very common situation. Parents with 1 or 2 kids, let's say around the age of 5, 8, 7, and they have a newborn. Means a new baby coming home. Let's discuss this situation. What can happen? What should be done? I believe that in your background you have some case studies in this area. So the very first scenario. We have a family and we have a newborn. The mom was pregnant. They told the kids about that. First, so before we start, what would you suggest parents to tell kids about the coming baby girl or baby boy while the parents are still in pregnancy? What would you recommend?
Well, I think some of the first things to do when there are older children, maybe around 5 or 8, like you said, and there's a new baby coming, is really to create excitement around the baby. Involve the siblings as much as possible, maybe in decorating the nursery, or maybe they have some of their stuffies that they could also put in the nursery. Getting books ready, the blankets, depending on the age and the gender of the child or their interests. They might have different things that they connect with. So maybe, I know for my daughter, she's very into babies and blankets and bottles. Maybe she could be kind of preparing that for a younger sibling. My son's a little bit older, he's 8. So maybe an older sibling around that age, maybe like I said, some of their toys, they might clean them out or help. I know a lot of the kids who come here in my practice, they love to just rearrange some of these stuffies and the squishmallows. So they really do love to decorate. Even some of the teenagers love that. So I think in any way to involve them and get them excited about the baby. Some may want to help with feeding or holding the baby, but just really creating that excitement that they're going to have like a new little member of the family.
Okay, so let's assume, I would like to make it little bit harder. Let's assume the parents did everything you just said, but the reality shows, even from the Bible, even in the Bible, you can see when you have one sibling, the new one, they don't really get managed together. So can you share with us what can happen, what is the problems and how to address them? What is the major problem we should know to address or to recognize and then to address when we have issues between brothers, conflicts and so on?
Yes. So when I think about conflict between siblings, and it's very common in my practice, something that I work on with a lot of families here, like during the intake, it's one of the first things we talk about, the members of the family. Often it comes up in that time where families share stories, even if the child is 8 or 12, about the sibling relationship. And so I think it's important to get that information. I remember, Ami, from one of my licensure exam questions, it was like $1 million question on our licensure exam that we had to take. But it talks about 3 C's. So the 3 C's, that was like the big answer for that question among siblings. Around, that early childhood age, the 3 C's are conflict, competition, and comparison. And so developmentally, it's really appropriate that we see these things, the conflict, comparison, and competition. So I think to connect to your first question, the one thing would be having that information is how can we prevent that, right? Knowing that some of that will be developmentally appropriate and common for siblings, but what can we do as parents to prevent some of those things so that it's not causing long-term impact on that relationship between the siblings or individually with the older sibling self-esteem, their performance in school, things of that nature.
I see. I have to ask you something about that. When in many occasions, parents would say, "Oh, they're just jealousing. Hey, all attention is with the new baby. I have no other chances. I have to be with my newborn. I cannot ignore him. But they will manage later on. I can. In between the line, I understood that you are actually saying that if you want to solve this problem, you might have a long-term problem with that."
Absolutely. And I think there's a couple things here, right? I think with the pandemic, we learned as parents and as psychologists to really have grace for ourselves and for our children, right? So I think that on one hand, it's acknowledging that siblings, so the mother, then the father, different roles, but for them to, if they're both in the home or both involved with the children, for those parents or those caregivers to allow space for those children's feelings, right? So for example, my son who's 8, our daughter was in the NICU, right? She required a lot of extra care when she was born. And so I think acknowledging and validating the sibling that really is taking more time right now, right? To do all the things that were required for her feeding and her naps. And when a new baby comes, they may actually receive more attention, right? Yeah. And I think it's really important that between us, I'll just say for the mother and the child, to really validate and allow space versus saying to them, invalidating them would be to say, oh, it's fine. No, you're getting so much attention. I took you to the zoo, right? Or it's really just allowing them that space to talk about how it is difficult to have a younger sibling who might be getting more attention.
I see. There is another thing that it happens with no attention. Grandparents come to visit. Your best friend come over to visit, and the very first thing they do, oh my gosh, he looks so similar to you or to the father, and it's comparison. It's actually comparison, isn't it? Because because the older kids doesn't really know if they are in the loop or if they are part of that conversation. And comparison is part of a very natural conversation between adults next to the kids. Oh, he looks much more bigger than Dana that was born 3 years ago. And so on. What to do with that? How can you address comparison that even the one that we don't even aware we are actually creating? How to address comparison, because it's a natural thing to do sometimes.
Absolutely. And I think, again, it starts with giving ourselves and others grace. But I know in my practice, the parents that I work with, even if the children are older, 10 and 12, is really the awareness of the parent the one who's the primary caregiver, to notice, to make sure they're kind of, when the guests come, for example, I know for some people, I suggest to my families, they might bring a little something. If they're bringing a gift for the new baby, they might bring a little something. I don't have a toy here, but they might bring a little something for the older child, right? If that's possible. If they're bringing a gift, to bring something small for them too, because oftentimes the baby is getting a lot of new things as well as attention. So I originally said, I think it's really important that the primary caregiver validates the child's feelings, but at the same time, especially if the mother has just given birth or whatever has gone on, they're very tired and they are focused on feeding the baby and taking care of them. So I think it's important to think about there are other people. If there's if there's an aunt or an uncle, or if there is the dad or another family member, a grandmother who can help. So maybe they can take that older sibling to a park, or take them, outside to ride their bike. So that really utilizing all of those people to help that child a little bit older. It's important for them to have also one-on-one time with the primary caregiver. But then I think also being able for them to kind of keep their normal activities and still have fun things that are developmentally appropriate for them to do. And so it's not just all about the baby.
I see. So I have another question. I need to visualize that. Let's assume that the very same parents have done everything you said and told everyone to be aware and make the very same routine and the very same activities, and even sometimes even more with the other siblings, but still the natural behavior of these kids, I don't know why, they do not cope with the new baby. They have issues competing over your time, competing over even the same toys, always conflicts in the family between you and your husband because of the connection with the kids, and you cannot stop it. Can you describe me, how does it work in your clinic? Let's assume that a family of two parents, one parents come over with the baby and one older sibling. How does it work? What do you do?
So I think in my practice, I'm working with a lot of parents right now around siblings, and looking at, this might have been going on for a little bit of time for me in my practice, but if we were able to prevent it or to be very early on, I think that I talk with parents about that importance of one-on-one time. Again, so it doesn't have to be that you are going to the zoo. It can be that you're just, coloring together, you're playing catch, you're taking a walk on a trail, maybe you're just going to a playground. What's really recommended in the research is just about 10 to 15 minutes each day where you're checking in with each of your children, right? Just quality one-on-one time. You don't have to spend a lot of money. It's actually not as long as you think. It's just 10 to 15 minutes where you're having quality one-on-one time. And I think, again, for that, the siblings, is to allow them that space to talk about their frustrations, or if they perceive there's favoritism or comparison, where they can talk about that, right? And you're validating them and not invalidating them to say, no, it's fine, grandma didn't mean that, right? And I want to go back real quick. I was saying, as I know as a mom, also the other thing you can do if family members or friends aren't really taking that, suggestion, I sometimes will also say for my older child, like, oh, and also, Joe's going to chess camp. He just got a trophy, right? So you're like giving them information to make conversation with the older sibling about, right? Like, he's in YouTube camp. Here's his art. Because naturally, sometimes if there's a child, it's not always the baby, but who is more charismatic, or for whatever reason is getting maybe more outgoing or getting more attention, you can also kind of redirect people or give them information to talk with the older child about.
I see, but in your clinic, you are the process is in front of the parents, right? Or you work with the siblings as well. How does it work in the clinic?
Sure. So oftentimes what's happening right now, it's a trending, a very, I think, a hot buzz topic here, is that maybe one child. So for example, I have a really interesting case right now, a family where the client, I'll just say the first sibling comes to me, and I meet with them and I do an intake, and, we begin therapy around some of the emotional, some of the, behavior, emotional problems that the child is experiencing. And then what ends up happening, I also do a parent intake, and then I also do individual parent sessions. So with the sibling stuff, oftentimes I'll also, like right now I'm just meeting also one-on-one with the mom. She's doing amazing work. She's really interested in kind of breaking these generational patterns. And I think it's a way as a therapist clinically to sensitively point out some of these things that may have been going on. So it might be that the child who's maybe being more disruptive or having the behavioral problems is the child who's brought to therapy. But then often, so what I do right now is I then also see their sibling right before them. So I'll see them back to back 1 hour before each other. And so it's become really common, and they each have their own individual time. And I'm also able to get their own perspective, their each individual perspective, and then also work with the parent. Right now, in this case, it's a mom, and then explain to her, just to say awareness of that child who seems to be acting out more, why they might be behaving that way, right? And explaining versus the child who may not have the language or the skills to say they're just acting out, right? So I'm working with them individually to have those skills and to communicate more appropriately, but also then to kind of improve like mom's awareness and then monitoring of the siblings, right? So she can kind of see it.
I see. Another question I have, people come over to you, I believe, and share with you problems between the siblings and the newborn and how to address it. And it's a new reality that they need to cope with. Did you manage to see where the parents are the problem between them that cause the siblings to behave the way they behave? Means the communication between the parents and how does it affect the way the siblings see the reality? Did you manage to address that or to analyze this, where the parents contributing without even being aware to these problems and crises?
Absolutely. And I think when you think about the problems of the conflict between parents, or even if there is, favoritism, I think one thing, we've been talking about, right, is that oftentimes we're preparing for the nursery. I know for us, we took, a lot of classes at the hospital that were around feeding and bathing and those types of classes, right? But we've been talking a lot too about what if we could go back now, right, versus what I'm seeing in my practice today, and rewind, what would we want to, share with parents about how to prevent this conflict? And so we talked a little bit, I think, around, even if it's the first baby, but the parents are really allowing time for their own self-care, their own relaxation, and communicating that, because there does become less time, right, when there's a new baby. And I think that a way to do that is really to talk about the needs. If the mom needs a nap, if the dad wants to go out with friends, really communicating that schedule, because the more children we add to that schedule, the more it becomes a lot more to manage time-wise and organize. And so I think a way to prevent that is just the communication between the caregivers around their own, well-being, spending time as a couple, spending time as a family together, spending time individually with each of those children, right? And then their own self-care.
A question that I like to ask: what would you recommend to grandparents to do? What would be your tip to them in order to help their kids that just have their own kids, means they have grandkids? What would you recommend grandparents? And I'm talking about two cases: grandparents who live nearby and grandparents that live far away. It's two different scenarios. What would you recommend them?
Sure. Well, I think that, we saw during the pandemic, I'll start with what can grandparents do that are far away, right? So I think during the pandemic, we saw, even if they were close by, we've seen grandparents reading stories, right? FaceTime is really popular now, a way to maintain that relationship, anything over technology, where they could read stories. It also helps the parents, right? Maybe they can get the dishes or the laundry done, or meditate, or take a little nap. If that older child is able to be on FaceTime with grandma and showing them their toys, right? Or just telling stories. So just as we had distance learning during the pandemic, right? And that kind of kept the child busy, so to speak, on technology. It's a great way for the relationship. It's a great way for those grandparents who are far away that they can see the child's room, they can see the child's artwork, right? They can hold the things up. So it's a great way. And then it's helpful to the parents, like I said, because it gives them a few free minutes, maybe to read a book or to take a shower, right? Those grandparents who are close by, I mean, this is huge, right? I mean, it's grandparents, it's also neighbors, it's aunts and uncles, right? I know for us, we even had like some high school kids who were in the neighborhood. They weren't even high school, they're probably middle school. So I was still home, but they would come and play with our son in his playroom, right? So if they are close by, they could come, they could take the child, you know, for Chick-fil-A, for some ice cream, whatever that is, a little treat, a snowball here in Maryland. They could do that. They could just take them for a walk. It doesn't have to cost money, right? You can walk on a trail. You can walk down the street, look at flowers, like a little nature walk and talk. I mean, kids love just individual attention, again, where you talk about their day, what they're doing for camp, basketball, whatever they're into, right? My son does taekwondo, and now he's into chess. Like, just asking them, right? So it's helpful for the relationship. But again, it gives that child that one-on-one time where they feel validated. I think grandparents that are close by, I think anything where someone brings you, I laugh, but like toilet paper and, you know, if you have the resources to say, here's laundry detergent, it's hard to get out to go to the grocery. I mean, now we have Instacart and things like that, but it's still just that idea, like, you know, here's toilet paper, here's paper towels, right? You could bring something small that you know they need. At the same time, it could be something, it could also be something that is like art where the child can color, or a new ball, and anything that's novel and new, it's like a different toy. I mean, I know here in my practice, I was doing it last night. I'm constantly rotating the toys that are out, right? It's a new fidget toy. It's a new Squishmallow. They're like, Dina, what did you get that's new? You know, every time they come. So I think the same is true for grandparents where it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. It's like, oh, I got these, you know, new pens here. We're going to like color on some white paper, right? It doesn't have to. I mean, it could also be something where you are getting a gift card maybe to Chick-fil-A or the movies or something like that, right?
Yeah. Well, it was so lovely to talk to you, and I didn't pay attention to the time. 20 minutes gone like that.
What?
And yeah, listen, Dana, we are going to meet again because I have plenty of questions for you. And first of all, I would like to thank you for your time. As I said,
It's been
we
20
will meet
minutes?
again. Yeah. And for anyone who watched us, I would like to thank you for your time. And by the name of Little One That Care and Dr. Dana, we would like to say again, thank you and bye.